why Kimiko might be the one who finally destroys Homelander. The second to last episode of The Boys didn't just set up a finale. It quietly revealed the one thing Homelander has feared since season 1. Not Butcher, not Soldier Boy, not the virus, Kimiko. And once you connect all the clues hidden throughout episode 7, it starts to look terrifyingly possible that Kimiko is about to become the weapon that finally strips Homelander of everything that makes him a god. Because this episode wasn't really about Homelander becoming immortal. It was about creating the one person capable of making him human again. The episode opens with pure insanity. Homelander sitting in the Oval Office like he owns America. A worship song blasting in the background. The Democratic Church turning him into a literal messiah. And what makes this scene so disturbing is that Homelander isn't pretending anymore. Earlier seasons showed him hiding behind PR campaigns and fake smiles, but now he's openly reshaping the country around himself. He's demanding military action, controlling policy, executing the president in broad daylight because the guy hesitated for half a second. That head-crushing scene might honestly be one of the most important moments in the entire series. Not because of the gore, because it proves Homelander has crossed the final line. There's no more humanity left in him. And that matters because The Boys has always followed one core theme. Every Supe still has some emotional weakness tying them to humanity. A-Train had guilt. Maeve had regret. Deep had insecurity. Even Soldier Boy had buried feelings about Stormfront and family. But Homelander? Episode 7 shows us he's finally lost the last piece of himself, especially after Soldier Boy rejects him. That entire scene between Homelander and Soldier Boy is heartbreaking in the weirdest possible way. Homelander genuinely thinks giving him V1 means his father finally accepts him. But Soldier Boy basically says, "I did this for Clara, not for you." And that completely destroys Homelander emotionally. People overlook something important here. Homelander doesn't kill Soldier Boy because of anger alone. He freezes him because abandonment terrifies him more than hatred. That's why Homelander always keeps people trapped near him instead of letting them leave. Maeve, Ryan, Ashley, Noir, even Stillwell. Control is the only version of love he understands. So when Soldier Boy says he's leaving forever, Homelander snaps. And here's where the episode gets clever. Because right after Homelander gains immortality, the show immediately starts building a counterweapon, Kimiko. Butcher's new plan sounds insane at first. Expose Kimiko to massive radiation levels and recreate what happened to Soldier Boy in Russia. But if you think about it carefully, it actually makes terrifying sense. Soldier Boy's blast isn't just energy, it's anti-Supe energy. It burns the compound Vi out of people's blood. That's why Maeve lost her powers. That's why Kimiko temporarily lost hers in season 3. That's why Homelander fears Soldier Boy more than anyone else alive. Not because Soldier Boy is stronger, because Soldier Boy can make him weak. And episode 7 quietly reveals something huge. The virus is no longer the main plan. Kimiko is. What's fascinating is that the episode never confirms whether the experiment worked. And that's intentional. Because the suspense isn't, can Kimiko survive? The suspense is, what happens if she actually becomes stronger than Soldier Boy? Remember, Soldier Boy gained those radiation abilities through decades of torture and experimentation. Kimiko received a version engineered by Sister Sage. That changes everything. And honestly, Sage's involvement might be the biggest clue in the entire episode, because Sage doesn't help unless she sees a logical path to success. She had already given up emotionally. She was lobotomizing herself with junk food and reality TV because she believed humanity was doomed. But Frenchie changes her mind. And that conversation about love is way more important than people realize. Frenchie basically tells Sage something she spent her whole life denying. Love cannot be solved mathematically. That breaks her worldview. And after that conversation, she helps perfect Kimiko's procedure. Not test it, perfect it. That wording matters. Now here's where the theory gets really interesting. What if Kimiko's power doesn't just replicate Soldier Boy's blast? What if it evolves beyond it? Because Kimiko already has one ability Soldier Boy never had, regeneration. Her body adapts constantly. Every injury makes her heal back stronger. So if her cells are repeatedly absorbing radiation while regenerating at the same time, there's a chance her body isn't simply copying Soldier Boy's ability, it's mutating it. That could explain why they specifically chose Kimiko instead of another Supe. She's the only one whose body could potentially survive the transformation long enough to evolve it. And if that's true, Homelander is in serious trouble because Soldier Boy's blast was slow and unstable. Kimiko's might be controllable, faster, deadlier, possibly even targeted. And suddenly, Frenchie's death becomes even more devastating because his death is probably the emotional trigger that activates Kimiko's final transformation. Think about how the boys usually handles Kimiko emotionally. She rarely speaks. Her emotions explode physically instead. Rage is how she communicates trauma. When her brother died, she became monstrous. When Frenchie was hurt, she went feral. When she lost her powers, she spiraled emotionally. Now, Frenchie dies in her arms immediately after the experiment. That timing cannot be accidental. The show is clearly setting up grief as the ignition point, and the way Frenchie dies matters too. He traps himself in the radiation chamber with Homelander. That's symbolic. Frenchie, the least physically powerful member of the team, willingly walks into death just to buy Kimiko a chance. He sacrifices himself believing she can finish the mission. That belief is going to haunt her and probably fuel her. But here's the scary part. Even if Kimiko can remove Homelander's powers, that still may not kill him because of V1. The episode keeps things deliberately vague about what V1 actually did. Everyone assumes it granted immortality, but we never see proof. No new powers, no physical transformation, no confirmation from Sage. And I think there's a reason for that. The writers want us questioning whether Homelander can even die anymore, meaning the finale may not be about killing him. It may be about depowering him permanently. And honestly, that's a much crueler ending for Homelander because Homelander's greatest fear has never been death. It's insignificance, being ordinary, being unloved, being powerless. Take away his powers and he becomes the exact thing he's always hated, human. This also explains why the show brought Marie Moreau back right now. Marie's blood powers are probably essential to the final battle. People forget that Compound 5 exists in the bloodstream. If Kimiko can burn the V out of Homelander, Marie might be able to manipulate whatever remains, possibly even stop his healing factor entirely. That's why Gen 5 has spent 2 seasons building Marie up as someone uniquely important. Not necessarily because she'll kill Homelander herself, but because her abilities complement Kimiko's perfectly. One removes the V, the other controls the blood carrying it. Together, that's terrifying. There's also another hidden clue nobody's talking about. Homelander runs away from Frenchie's radiation trap. He doesn't stay and test himself against it. That's incredibly important. Homelander, the man who fears nothing, retreats, even after taking V1. Which means deep down, he still believes Soldier Boy's radiation can hurt him. That fear alone tells us the threat is real. And if Homelander believes Kimiko now possesses that same power, he's going to panic. A scared Homelander is the most dangerous version of Homelander because fear makes him reckless. And we already saw signs of that this episode. Killing the president, freezing Soldier Boy again, dissolving the Seven, threatening mass executions. He's spiraling. But the finale probably won't just be a giant CGI fight. The show has always been more psychological than physical. That's why Ryan is still the biggest wild card, because Ryan represents the one thing Homelander cannot control completely: love without fear. And I think the finale is building toward a brutal emotional contrast. Kimiko may strip Homelander of his powers, but Ryan may reject him entirely afterward.